Hey guys, it's Spacey Sims, and we are back with more Virche Epic Lycoris, continuing the Drifter's story, and we are in Adolphe's perspective right now. Hold on a second. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Anyway, should have done that before, but you don't notice until you start talking, and you're like, oh, hi guys, what's up? Ugh. Anyway, what have I gotten myself into? I couldn't imagine wearing the costume Tamaki was putting together for me. As my clothing came together, so did my character as the Watchman of Death. This was embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. I could feel my face starting to get red. I love this, look back at, Anko's creation and, Adolphe the whole time when he's doing it being like, I'm so fucking humiliated that I gotta do this. And, talk about stage fright, you know? He's like, oh, God. And then, you wonder, now I can't wait. I like this. I like that they did this. And then we're going to go and do the Anko route. So we'll have a little more in Anko's head as if, is he still Adolphe in there? Or did he just totally fall into this personality where this is him now and everything that used to be Adolphe has just gotten erased? You know what I mean? You lived so long in this character, you don't know how to be anything but the character anymore. You know? Interesting. Still, Tamaki was going to the trouble of making this costume, so I didn't really have a choice at this point. He knows it! He's as fucking goofy as Eve! As I lay down to sleep, I looked over and saw that Tamaki was still hard at work, sewing my clothes late into the night. Aren't you going to sleep? I spoke quietly so that I wouldn't wake Noel as Tamaki continued working under the small light. I'll go to sleep once I'm done with this section. Okay. Carefully stitched together the fabric, piece by piece, so it wouldn't tear or fall apart. You're really good at this. Or does everyone from your homeland have a knack for sewing? Of course not. I simply took on the craft since it was a pastime of my mother's. Tamaki cut the excess thread between his teeth before he responded. Still, you seem a lot more skillful than most. I was a curious little thing in my youth. I pursued things that captured my interest and gained knowledge of various trades. In fact, I developed an affinity for plants, not because of how beautiful they are, but because of their interesting ecosystem. That said, these are just hobbies. I'm far from an expert in them. I'm just an ordinary person like anyone else. I didn't believe a word he just said. I bet you're special, even compared to the people outside of this country. There's no such thing as a special person in this world. In the time I came from, there was a guy known as a god who did almost everything. I recalled the name of the demon who made me immortal. I take it this person wasn't born a god. He must have ascended to that status by the strength of his desire to become one. Stop making that guy sound better than he is. Look, you're just jealous because he's hot. You seem to dislike this god you speak of. That bastard Cyan Brophies killed your descendant Eve. I see. Seems like the Brophies family and my family are bound by fate. I kind of want to see, So, the thing is, all of this timeline where, she kills herself in the field and then... Well, actually, how did Cyan kill Eve if Eve and Adolphe decided to go back and travel back in time? You know what I'm saying? This doesn't make any sense. Because, all right, the timeline is very baffling, and I kind of want a timeline map. I want them to be beginning of time, future Adolphe ends up back in time and plants the Lycorises. Then Drifter shows up, then gives book to Cyan's grandfather, blah, blah, blah. Cyan's born. You know what I mean? I need a timeline of, what the fuck supposedly happened. I know that, once she, tries to kill herself in the field, that's when everything starts going haywire and the timelines kind of diverge. But, up to that point, what the fuck happened? Because, like, there was obviously a time something happened, but yet the original timeline, she killed herself in the field, and then Adolphe went back in time and planted the flowers. So, in a way, that was a consistent loop that was always happening. You know what I mean? Because you can't just say, oh, she killed herself in the field of Lycoris that only existed because Adolphe went back in time and started planting them. You know what I'm saying? So there is a timeline somewhere, and like, but like Adolphe hasn't become Anko yet, right? So Anko is the one that lives through all the different times and keeps going back in time to try to stop her, and then sees all the different futures that play out from every path from where the first game kind of starts, where she's about to kill herself in the field and Anko's like, no, no, don't do that. And then all those different routes kind of split from there, and Anko being like, nah, not that guy. Wait, oh my God, wait a minute. You know, because he knows the truth of everyone. But how did he know all that? Because, I mean, like, okay, so in the original timeline, before Adolphe decided to go back in time and then and then become Anko, right? When we do kill ourselves, and that's what spurns the whole thing. How did this Adolphe right now, then, you know, so, okay, let's say this is the first run through the time. It can't be the first run through because somebody had to have planted, or maybe it is the first run through. It can't be the first run through. You know what I mean? We're creating a time, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but like, whatever. Somehow Adolphe went back in time before this moment even and planted all the Lycorises, then ends up here. Don't know how. Was he trying to get back to the future and then ended up in the future, but not quite as far future as he wanted to be, type of a thing? You know, because he kind of washes up and is bedraggled. And, like, if he's been poking around in the thing, like, the world for centuries while the flowers have been blooming, like, you know what I mean? Nobody's seen him. So, like, what happened to how between that? Because, like, there seems to be, like, a discrepancy where I don't think they've thought about this. Or they just don't want to re-explain it for those of us who may have forgotten. But also it's not clear enough where you're like, oh yeah, okay. You're like, it doesn't make sense. But sure, he somehow ended up super back in the beginning of time, planted all the Lycorises. Okay, sure. And then from that point to here, just is gone. So time travel again, I guess, because that's what we're just, so maybe, sure, okay, fine, I'll buy that, I guess, because it's the only explanation we really have. But, like, how did he know when he was going to first go back in time, when she killed herself in the field, that, well, because none of that stuff, nothing with cyan had happened, he didn't know the cause of the poison, he didn't know any of that. Like, we didn't technically know any of that, but yet he does? Because Adolphe, at that point in time, when Anko stops her from killing herself, right, doesn't know, and Adolphe doesn't know any of that stuff, like the answers to everything. So how does Anko know the answer to everything at that point in time in order to go back? So, like, you know what I mean? And, like, I guess it's supposed to be almost inferring that, but he's not Anko yet, so it's not even like, oh, he kept going back in time, short periods of time, like, oh, he went back 5 years, and then he went back 5 years, and then different things played out and saved her, but he didn't, because in order for any of this to happen, Adolphe has to, like, she has to die, Adolphe has to go back in time to plant the Lycorises, meet the Drifter, become Anko, then stop her from killing herself. So all of the other events, so up until that point of her about to kill herself in the field, the beginning of the first game, Adolphe knows jack fucking shit. So how does this Adolphe know everything? Because he hasn't experienced everything yet. We're pretending that this is the first run through, sort of, that he's aware of. Okay? Where he goes back and plants the Lycorises and then ends up here, and then he's going to go stop her from killing herself because now he's split and become a new person. Like, but like, I don't know. Like, they're really. I don't think they really thought about a lot of this, and a lot of times time travel stuff gets a little weird, but also time travel stuff people think about, okay, well, this happens and then this and this, but how does this Adolphe that's okay, Oncolfe, because he hasn't become Onco yet, how does this one know all the things that happened? I mean, Cyan killed Eve. How, though? Because what we saw in your flashback was you, Eve, and Hugo about to be like, and Hugo was staying behind, and you and Eve were going to go back in time. And Cyan didn't exist then, so Cyan couldn't have killed him. Cyan doesn't exist right now, where you are, with the Drifter. Cyan hasn't been born yet. You know what I mean? Like, so like, I mean, Cyan could possibly be being born, I suppose, like in the next few years, because the Drifter disappeared and was like 16 years later, and then he meets, and Lilo or whatever her name is, but like Cyan's grandfather could have already had kids at that point. So Cyan could be Noel's age. So Cyan could be a baby right now, but there's no way that baby killed Eve. So how did Cyan kill Eve? This is like Adolphe talking as if he's seen all the other timelines, but there's no way he could have because Onco doesn't exist yet and Onco's the one that saw all the timelines. So it doesn't make any sense. So, like, are we supposed to infer that somehow, even without Onco existing, Adolphe knows all the Onco timelines and he wouldn't be bitching about this costume because he'd be like, yep. You know what I mean? And, like, so that's impossible. So, like, they just... See, you're kind of taking me out of it, game, because you're trying to, like, throw in all this stuff. And, like, before your science was wibbly wobbly and fucked up, but, like, it was like, whatever, fantasy game, and there's science and your genes disappear. And, okay, sure, whatever. We'll just. Whatever! But, like, now you're going to get me pissed with the whole time travel shit that you're not really explaining. And Cyan killed Eve, but Eve was with you, and there's no way Cyan could have killed him. Unless they were going to go set off to go back in time, Cyan shows up and kills Eve before they leave. Now, that could have happened, sure, but I'm going to need some explanation for this wild fucking accusation that you're making. And I'm sure in some of the other, like, endings and different paths, Cyan killed Eve and Lucas killed Cyan and everybody killed each other, so, like, fair enough. But you don't know about any of that yet, so you can't make that accusation, you know what I mean? So, like, this is just... Like, if Adolphe had come back in time on his own and we hadn't seen that little scene, I would have been like, okay, what happened in that original timeline where she kills herself? That, you know what I mean? But that wasn't different because everybody was alive when Onco stops her from killing herself. So even the reality of where Adolphe came from, well, that's not true. That's not true. After she kills herself, the events on the original timeline could have been vastly different before Adolphe tries to go back in time. So it could have been 10 years later, 5, whatever. So fair enough. That could have been true. The original version of the timeline after she kills herself in the field could have been vastly different. Cyan kills Eve. But again, then how is Eve standing on the shore about ready to peace out with you and go on a magical adventure if Cyan killed him? So... I can only hope you're going to explain that to us, but you won't. We're supposed to just take it at face value, but I think you've forgotten your own story. So, you know, anyway. Tamaki put down his work and quietly turned his attention to me. So a demon will be born from the Brofeast family line because of the knowledge I bestowed. Tamaki wasn't angered by the fact that his descendant was killed. But it wasn't because redoing history would prevent the event from happening. It seems our families end up not understanding each other until the very end. It was from sorrow that the man he trusted would contribute to such a tragedy. I was used and abused by the evil people in this world, but not once had I been betrayed by someone I trusted, which was why I could only imagine the sadness Tamaki felt from being blamed and nearly killed by the one he trusted. You still want to save this country's future? I mean, all I can assume is that, because he did say something about being tested on or whatever, something, like, but So maybe he and Eve were planning to go, and then were kidnapped by Cyan and locked up. Or did he mention that? I feel like maybe that was mentioned in the first game. So maybe there was something about, like, Anko having been kidnapped and tortured, or well, Adolphe before he became Anko, but, you know, after she died in the original timeline. Like, not the original timeline of the game, but the one that would have spurned him to go back in time. So maybe he and Eve were about to, like, set off, and then Cyan kidnapped them and then tortured them and whatever, and then Adolphe escaped, ended up here, and thought okay, maybe that happened. Maybe that's what it is. But explain that to me, because if that's from the first game, I'll fucking remember, and you should, like, you know, kind of fill that in, because, you know, I don't know. I wouldn't blame him at all if he wished for this country to fall to ruin. I just want to love this small country where I shared happy memories with Lilo and Noel. No matter how warped, it doesn't change the fact that this country is my second home. And that goofy, adorable labradoodleness seriously is passed down through generations. Also, the cooking weird food, but you're capable of doing it. Eva's not. The skill in doing it didn't pass down to him. Tamaki was stunning. I could never see this country in the same light after Spacey was killed. You say was killed as if I didn't do it myself. But to be fair, she was a sad sack and did it herself because of the way people treated her, so. Not exactly like she was like, you know, everything's been great for me, but I want to go, like, peace out. No, it was like, I'm death, everyone hates, so kind of other people drove her to it, so. If one day Spacey smiled and said that she was happy to have been born here, maybe then I might be able to start forgiving this country. I do love how much he loves her, that he's like, fuck this place over this one girl in particular. Like, you know? When that day comes, I want to show her the true color of the white lycoris is in bloom. And you did, but not as Anko. I'm sure she would look perfect beside them. I did, actually. I don't know how to make baby gurgle noises, guys. Sounds like a monster. Children are monsters. Noel slowly woke up, probably from us talking. Sorry, did I wake you? I lifted Noel into my arms as Tamaki was busy sewing. Half asleep, Noel blinked a few times and stared right into my crimson eyes. Was he trying to say something?
A duel.
A duel?
Adolphe.
Huh? He called not his father, but my name. His first word was Adolphe. That's so sweet. I heard a pin drop to the floor. Yeah, that's gotta feel weird, though. Sensing danger, I slowly turned around. Noel, you've never said your dad's name, and yet I had never seen Tamaki like this before. No, calm down, Tamaki. I know. I bet we misheard him, and...
Adolphe!
Ah! Children could be crueler than demons. Tamaki shook as he heard Noel continue to babble my name. He looked stunned, not necessarily angry. Also, why is the screen so dark? I guess it's because it's at night. Like, it's so... I feel like it's so dim. Like, the background. The letters are fine. Oh, that's him. I hate you, Adolphe. I know I don't have what it takes to be a parent. Even Lilo kept teasing me about how I looked like a child. This is my fault. Come out from under the blanket, Tamaki. The drama antics is very much Eve. I was too close to Noel while you were working, so...
Adolphe!
Read the room, Noel, or just please go back to sleep. Read the room! Do it till you're... Read the room! Why is Adolphe screaming read the room to a literal fucking baby? The funniest goddamn thing. And so, Tamaki would stay curled up under his blanket until the sun rose. I love the fact that he threw a drama fit about it. I mean, I understand being sad, like, oh, but he's like, ah! I gotta be honest, aside from like them not explaining in the weird time thing and like whatever, but like generally this route, again, aside from like the things where you're like, this isn't making sense, but whatever. It's the writing and everything itself. This is the bit of levity we needed in the fucking trauma train that is this motherfucking game. I am so glad we got through all the encore routes and all that fucking trauma. I mean, the Salvation End stuff was always good, you know, so those were good, but the encore ones were just like, goddamn, when we've gotten here, and this is just so fucking funny. Like, there's just, it's almost like it doesn't belong to Virche at all. It doesn't belong to this game or the sequel because it's too funny. And like, but at the same time, even playing the first game, they had those moments where everyone was getting drunk and stuff. You're like, this is adorable. We're all gonna die. But like right now we're having a good time. You know what I mean? Like, but this whole entire route is just kind of fun. You know, we had the good backstory. You had the good backstory part, and you're like, okay, we're backstory. Yep. It wasn't like super light, but it wasn't like heavy and depressing. It was just, okay, it's here. Nothing wrong with it. But I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't funny. It wasn't tragic. It was just, okay, informational. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're here. And then you get to this, where fucking Adolphe shows up, and it just gets it just gets a little cuckoo bananas, and it's just kind of fun. I somehow avoided destroying my friendship with Adolphe after Noel's innocent babbling. His costume was coming along steadily, and Noel and Adolphe continued spending time together peacefully. A month later, his clothes were close to completion. I made them extremely slutty just to piss him off. You know when he was like, oh, we should make the back open and make it a little slutty and make me make it like a dress. And he's like, no, God, please stop. And Tamaki is like, I'm gonna fucking do it. I'm gonna fucking give you a tit window. After Noel fell asleep, I decided to enjoy some liquor that I made while looking up at the moon in the sky. Oh God, is he gonna get drunk? I stepped out with 2 shallow drinking cups. I was wondering where he went, but as expected, Adolphe was sitting alone outside. He was sitting on the stone wall and looking up into the star-littered night sky. Illuminated by the moonlight, he looked down at a small blue gem in his palm. What's that? I sat next to him with the liquor and cups in hand. It's a memento of Spacey. He gazed with longing at the jewel that shone beautifully as it reflected the moonlight. And yet it's funny because then those are the stone, like Anko's jewels or whatever that when we split. But it's like, it was the same blue, but like she never had that. So, And the only things I was able to bring with me were this and the dagger she used to kill herself. I can only imagine how many tears he shed as he gathered them from her dead body. It was a beautiful gem, and a rarity even in my previous line of work, but perhaps carrying it through time had worn the surface down a bit. Do you mind if I have a look? Go ahead. I carefully received this fragment of his memory with a small towel so as not to damage it. I took out my glasses from my pocket and observed the gem from all angles. I'm sorry. Did you say the word glasses for the drifter and you never put them on him so we could see this beautiful fucking man with glasses? No, you didn't. How dare you, game? You're like, look at this beautiful man you can't date because he's like your future boyfriend's great-great-grandpa or some shit. And you're like, really unfair. And then they're like, oh, and by the way, he whips out glasses. Ah! Rude. So rude. I hate this game. 0 out of 10. Don't recommend. Oh. Adolphe, do you mind telling me how you acquired this gem? Was this from Arpachel? I don't remember. I do know that I've had it in its raw state for a long time. He fell deep into thought, but could only come back with a vague memory that it wasn't from Arpachel. I see. Is it rare? I couldn't even put a price on it. And this gem is probably the only one of its kind to be discovered. What? Rather, I'd go so far as to say you may be the only one with this gem in the world. Its purity and brilliance is exceptional. I bet even a tiny shard of it could easily buy a whole city. How the hell does she end up with it? And then, okay, it's fine because then that turns into Anko's jewelry that then we turn into our after he died, in Adolphe's rod. Okay, fine. But, and now we see the full circle, so that's kind of cute. Adolphe carried it through time. It was mine that then Anko wore, and then we and Adolphe kind of then share those gems, and it's like, and it was ours, and it was a memento of it. And like, that's beautiful, okay? Like, A+ for that. But if Adolphe took it from me after I killed myself in the original timeline, how come I didn't have it the second time around? Like, when he goes back, now we're starting a new time. Okay, he's here, the flowers are here, whatever. And she's gonna be born, and he's gonna stop her as Anko. How come she didn't have that gem then? You know what I mean? Interesting. I never thought it'd be so rare. I guess I have to thank Arbishel for being closed off from other countries. Agreed. You'd have to fight off thieves every day if word of its existence got out. Adolphe frowned with disgust at the thought of such a life. I'm never going to let anyone have it. This is the only proof I have that shows she and I are family. Yes, take good care of it. It can degrade over time if it's not handled correctly. If you don't mind, I can work on making it into an ornament to keep it secure. What do you say? You really can do anything. Seriously? It's a memento of her, so I won't force you to agree. Hearing my words, Adolphe fell deep into thought. To be honest, I want to keep it like this. But if things go according to plan, I won't be able to be with her as Adolphe, but instead as the Watchman of Death forever. If so, I want you to hold on to it as a showing of my departure from myself. He entrusted the gem to me with a strong sense of resolve. Are you sure? Yeah. It would be rude of me to press him further, given how determined he looked. Understood. The gem is in good hands. I wrapped the small towel around it and tucked it into my pocket. In turn, I handed Adolphe one of the cups I had brought with me. I promise that you'll be happy with the result. I want you to show her the gem that'll someday be reborn anew, Adolphe. I promise. I'll never let your efforts go to waste. I filled the shallow cups with liquor, and we raised them into the night sky. The moon shone and shifted upon the surface of the liquid. It seemed to represent his uncertain future, where he would live life as a new person. Looked like a skull in that motherfucking moon. I swear there was something, and it was like, it looks like a skull. I had been completely on my own since I went back in time. Spending time with Tamaki and his son was the first reprieve from my loneliness I had in hundreds of years. Okay, so he went back in time and he's been alone. Maybe he's been wandering around this tiny little wedge. I don't know. I mean, the island's pretty big if you think about it, so like, it had been a long time since I had any change of expression, let alone smiled. I must have caused him quite a bit of trouble when we first met. Still, Tamaki never raised his voice in anger, and reminded me of how to live as a normal human. Not only the basics of life, but also shared from the wealth of knowledge that he personally held. It's kind of better that you don't know how to function like a normal person, though, doesn't it? Now then, why don't we take a breather? After putting Noel to bed, we both stepped outside to take a break. He took out a long steel pipe and a match. What is that? Is there something inside it? It's called a kiseru. Kiseru? Kiseru? Or what you'd call a smoking pipe. It's used in my homeland to smoke tobacco. You place some cut tobacco leaf in the dimple here and light it to get the smoke going. In my case, I use a blend of herbs from around here to create my own unique concoction, so they're getting high. He's like, you see those plants over there? I'm using that. They're smoking herbs. Okay. As if to show me how it was done, Tamaki used a match to light the tip of is it kiseru? I don't know. Pipe. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. A pipe used for smoking. We got that. We didn't need the glossary term for it. Unless you were going to give a little more background on it or something, but it's a pipe. It's a smoking pipe. There's smoking weed. Okay. And the area was suddenly filled with a floral fragrance, which then changed to something uniquely herbal. I don't know what pot smells like, because, if you're interested, would you like to try it? Noticing my interest, he handed me the pipe he had just lit. To be honest, I couldn't recall if had ever smoked before, but oh, interesting. Now we choose as a Dolphin. Okay. Okay, we accept. That's actually the last choice in this. If it was for one's enjoyment, it couldn't taste horrible. I don't know about that. Sure, if you don't mind. I figured this would be a good chance for me to get the feel of his homeland's culture, so I decided to give it a puff. I grabbed the pipe with my fingers and put my mouth on the unlit end. I took a deep breath of the smoke and yeah, if you've never smoked before, it was hard to explain. All I knew was that a terrible taste spread throughout my mouth and nose. Hey, what the hell? That almost made me throw up. I suppose you don't like it. Tamaki took the Kisaru pipe from my hand and laughed as I coughed my lungs out. I'm surprised you can smoke that thing. It smelled like a concentration of only the worst parts of the herbs. But that aroma is divine to me. You'll appreciate its flavor once you get used to it. Spending time talking together like this was fun. But I knew that times like these didn't last very long. I needed to become this watchman of death and start consuming the Lycorises as soon as possible in order to save Spacey. These calm days were just a temporary sanctuary. It would all come to an end soon. We'll see about that. And when that time comes, we'll have to part ways. Oh, now have a bromantic kiss. Noel didn't know a future awaited where we needed to say goodbye. I thought he was talking to Tamaki. He's telling this to the baby! Oh, Adolphe, you're so ridiculous. I love you. He looked at me and tilted his head with wonder as I spoke to him.
Adolphe? I'm pretty sure my grandpa had a dog named Adolphe when he was a kid.
I just imagine Adolphe turns into Anko and leaves, and then Noel just remembers Adolphe as a name, so they get him a dog, and then it's like, or a fucking rabbit or something. I mean, there's probably not dogs running around on this wedge, but I could tell that Adolphe was preparing himself to part ways when that day arrived. It was the same with me, too. His home was simply a resting ground for him during his journey to save his beloved. I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't be sad. Perhaps if I delayed completing his attire, we could spend more time together. I was sure Noel would be happy to have his dear Adolphe around for longer. But I had no intention of slowing my work. I wanted him to go and save his beloved as soon as possible. It's gonna be like a long time before I'm born, sweetie. It's not like we're in that much of a rush. Well, he needs to start eating the Lycorises, but he could have started doing that here while Tamaki was sewing the clothes. Adolphe could have been eating, you know what I mean? Which was why I was working with all my might on making the sturdiest clothing I could. And this is the one and only weapon I can give him. A masterpiece of perfection. Clothes befitting his new role as a watchman who could evade and control death. I put my heart and soul into the needle and continued stitching together the black fabric. Kind of would have been funnier if he's like, all my wife had was this really pretty pink floral fabric. And then, here's your outfit. I don't think the pink floral works really well. We should dye it, maybe. Like, a month had passed. I made a few extras just in case and finally defined his role and style of speech. I showed him how he could act to make her believe his backstory, and even taught him how to make explosives. Finally, I set up the foundation for creating the antidote using the papers that he stole from the Institute. There was nothing left for me to do now. The day for him to leave my home and return to his personal journey finally arrived. Do we get to see the reveal of, like, Anko as we know it? We decided to say goodbye in the field of Lycoris Noirs that I'd be protecting from now on. At the center was Adolphe standing quietly, clothed in his new attire. Yep, there he is! It's so, like... It's like just so, like, that. I mean, to think that the Drifter sewed all that is amazing. But, like, it's also kind of amazing that now all of a sudden it's 100% fucking Anko. And what we had before was Adolphe with Anko's kind of hair, but it was all bedraggled, but he looked like Adolphe. And now, but he's still Adolphe, so we're still going to give, and this is going to be so weird. It's Anko with the Adolphe voice, and it's going to be so bizarre, but he hasn't put on the affect yet, you know? And this is way more showy than I thought it'd be. How did this go? Okay, because, like, when we go back into the voice acting, I probably forget and we'll come back to, maybe I'll remember and come back to this. I'm curious, did they, obviously when he's talking as Adolphe, they have him as Adolphe, but then, like, do they, like, I would assume. So was he, like, Adolphe through the whole thing? Because, like, that's gotta be so bonkers to play, and you're used to, like, a totally different Anko voice, because it's a different voice actor, so it's, like, confusing. Adolphe was looking at himself with a raised brow, seeing how different he looked in his costume. I suppose you're right. It makes you look like an existence beyond mortals. With that on, I'm sure she'll believe you when you approach her as her partner. I sure hope so. One other thing. This is for my lost descendant. What's this? Something to protect your friend. A mask he can use to hide the burn marks on his face. That is so fucking sweet. I made it with some leftover fabric. You know what I never... Yeah, okay. Because it's got, like, the brownish color, but it's like, yeah, okay, all right. He doesn't sound like the sort who'd be ashamed of having protected her, but if he ever loses his smile because of his scars, please share this with him. Adolphe nodded and took the gift from my hand so that it could go to Eve, who had yet to be born. So sweet. The blue ornament on his earring swayed and clinked. I wasn't able to make any extras of those earrings. You be careful not to lose them, you hear? Yeah. The gem he carried with him had been born anew as a pair of earrings to be worn at all times. And they'd watch over his long journey on our behalf. Though it was saddening, the time had come to see him off. Now then, as proof of our contract and friendship, let me give you a new name. It may be a cliché, but instead of Adolphe, may I suggest the name Anko? It's the name used by the harbinger of death in another country. It'd be very fitting for the story. Anko. Oh, and now Anko is Anko, so now do we have to start speaking like Anko? I'm so confused. I feel like he's still Adolphe right now, even though, like, the name switched, but he hasn't started being Anko. He hasn't put on the persona yet, you know what I mean? So it's so weird. So that's my new name. Adolphe repeated the name over and over again, and gave his thanks to me yet again. And now I wonder, did they switch when all of a sudden Adolphe took on the Anko moniker? Did they switch the voice actor and make Anko speak in Anko's voice? Like, that would have been fucking great. You'd have been like, oh my god, stop it. I can't handle this. Like, I'm just gonna keep reading it as Adolphe because, you know. And this is not a curse, but a promise. Thank you, my friend. The Lycoris Noirs your bloodline will protect. I promise that they'll lead to salvation in the future. The Watchman of Death bid us farewell in the manner we had practiced. What's this? For someone who didn't like the role... Okay. I feel like we should have read that. Hold on. This is not a curse, but a promise. Thank you, my friend. The Lycoris Noirs your bloodline will protect. I promise that they'll lead to salvation in the future. The Watchman of Death bid us farewell in the manner we had practiced. Okay, and then, okay. For someone who didn't like the role, you're quite good at it, aren't you? I felt like I was going to tear up. As much as it amuses you, I know very well how sincere your efforts have been. Anko gave a graceful smile, then extended a finger painted black and crimson toward Knowles, sitting in my arms.
I want you to make Noel forget that there was ever a man known as Adolphe. Saying the name in front of the wrong people will put him in danger.
Understood. I may say the same to you, as danger may come if people discover your connection to me. Therefore, if anyone asks about how we met, you can say you met me once and only once.
Understood. Perhaps that's the best for both of us.
It was sad, but this was for him to attain his goal.
Now then, I should depart.
Adolphe?
Farewell, Noel. I pray that you'll grow up to be a fine man.
Anka moved his hand away from Noel, then turned around and began to walk away. The dark shadow grew smaller with each moment. Before he melted away and disappeared, I took a step forward. Anko! I called out to him one last time. My wish to return home disappeared long ago. In its place, I pledged myself to helping my noble friend. I promised to nurture the lives of these flowers all of my life. Should we one day meet again by some miracle, let's have a drink together like we always have. I yelled out a wish that would never come true. That's so sad! Maybe he somehow heard me as he stopped for a moment and turned around.
Thank you, Tamaki. Not only for being Eve's ancestor, but because you are a friend. I'm proud to have met you.
He smiled gently at me. He then vanished into the rising blizzard of Lycoris petals. His journey would continue. Perhaps the knowledge I shared with him would lead to new despair, but I believe in you. I was certain of it. No matter what form he took, he would reach the salvation he sought. As for me...
Papa?
Now then, Noel, we should set out on a little journey ourselves. This is the last time we'll lock ourselves in this constricted world. I would not run in fear anymore. I would face the unreasonable and continue to grow the higambana for him to consume. After all, Tamaki Shakugi, whatever his last name was, a drifter who'll meet and part ways with everyone he meets. Meet and part with everyone he meets. I feel like they meant that line to be so much more profound than it comes out. A drifter who will meet and part ways with everyone he meets. You meet and part ways with everyone you meet. That's just like, hi, nice to meet you. And even if you're talking to someone, you meet them and you always part ways with them. You don't stick with them forever and ever and ever. You always part ways at some point with them. So that is like, yeah, duh. Like, I feel like they meant it to sound so profound. And it just is like, yeah, okay. You dropped the ball there. Maybe it sounded better and more poetic in Japanese. We shall meet again, Ongo. I wish for you to find happiness at the end of your long voyage of life. And we'll get to, because now this, I'm assuming is the end, we'll unlock Ongo's route. Because let's see. Beloved memories of days past have been kept within my heart as I walked as far as possible. After I parted ways with Anko, I left my secluded home to return to the mainland. With my youthful looks and some cosmetics, I lived as a 22-year-old citizen of Arpachel. I made a promise to myself to spread knowledge of how to grow a steady yield of food to the citizens suffering from hunger. Armed with that achievement, I negotiated with the Arpachel royal family for the rights to the land covered with lycorises. Of course, I was worried that someone would find out that I was the drifter, but my disguise served me well, and no one seemed to have noticed who I truly am. Also, all the people that knew you were dead, so... Despite their reluctance, I somehow gained rights to the land surrounding this country. From then on, my son and I did our best to grow the lycorises in the face of persecution. I then created a story where the Lycoris noirs were planted by Death, who sought his beloved's hand in marriage. The oppression continued, making my life rather miserable with my revenue capped and my very life threatened, but neither Noel or I regretted what we were going through. We continued to live our lives in such a way that time quickly flew by like nothing.
12 years after Anko's farewell, I went into hiding, as I couldn't hide my age any longer. My body soon fell to illness a year after the future god, Scion Brothys, was born.
Ah! See? Okay, so he wasn't even born then. Although I'm confused. 12 years later. Okay, so he landed here, then it was 16 years later. He's been at least here for 28 years. He gave the book to Sion's grandfather. Now Sion's grandfather could have only maybe been like 18 to 20 or something. You know what I mean? So like, but the timeline's still not adding up because it's like this is now a year after Sion's been born, okay? But it's still been 28 years since he got here. How is Sion only being born now? You know what I mean? Like, how young was Sion's grandfather when Tamaki gave him the book? Because I thought Sion said it was his grandfather that the Drifter gave the book to. You know what I mean? And if Sion was just born, okay, like, and people only live 23 years, even if Sion's parents, they wouldn't have been 23 when they had him. They would have had him. So the timeline's not really adding up there. Because, like, what was his grandfather, like 16? I mean, I don't think they think about these things. That you're like, I can do math. And, like, I don't think you can. So I'm not really sure how that works. You know what I mean? Like, even if, like, okay, you had given Sion's grandfather the book and he was 20, and let's just say then he had Sion's father or mother or whoever right then and there that year. It was 16 years later, they're 16. Okay, when he meets Lilo, and then it was still at least a year after Lilo died, so that was 17 years. Okay, and now it's been 12. So it's still not working. Still not adding up. You gave the book to Sion's grandfather when he was like 10? Because it's like, listen, I know we talk about like Timmy having a midlife crisis at 10, but like I don't think he's doing all this genetic experimentation. Like Sion's grandfather sounded like he was a relative and adult at that time. So like I don't think they think about these things, and it drives. I know we're not supposed to get hung up on like the wacky science, but you can't fuck up the timeline like this and be like people only live to 23 if they're lucky, and then have 30 fucking years in here and then say Sion was just born. But what the fuck? How is that possible? Because they didn't have reliver technology. Sion invented it. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, the timeline's not adding up here, and I don't appreciate this because it's going to drive me bonkers. Anyway, Father, stay with me. I wondered how much time had passed since I started to spend idle days without any worry of food or sleep. Noel had grown into a fine young man, and in front of his very eyes, I was finally at the end of my long life of 59 years. 59 is not that long! What the fuck? Listen, I made it past 23 where the game was like, oh, people are done. Now it's like 59. I'm not 59. I got a ways to go to get to 59, but that's a lot closer than I'd like to be. Like, what the fuck? No, my long life of 59 years. I mean, of course, this was like a while, like, what? Well, Sion's like 80. So this was like 80 years ago. People were still living longer than 60, but in this economy, on this fucking planet, on this fucking little island of like suckitude. All right, we'll give him that, but it's still crazy. Hang in there. There are people outside this country who can live 70 years, you know? See? Considering that you're still too young. Exactly. No. I tried to calm my son down as this was something that couldn't be avoided. I'm sorry. It looks like I'm gonna be burdening you to a harsh fate by yourself. This is just an assumption, but you possess blood from outside this country.
which means that you'll probably live longer than the people of Arpachel. That's the only thing that worries me. If this country tries to kill the Noir's family, or they discover the truth of who you are, go into hiding immediately. You can still watch over the Lycorises even while in hiding. Tears were flowing out of Noel's eyes. I wonder if I can really handle everything myself. I'm pretty weak, you know. I doubt I can become a proud guardian like you, Father. You'll do fine. I reached out a wrinkled hand to the cheek of my son. Okay, I'm sorry, you ain't that wrinkled at 59. Jesus, simmer down. The game was like, do you see this man? Did you see when he was like making the costume for Anko? He was in his 40s and he was like looking fine. Then it's like, now he's dead. He's 59. Like, they just rushed it. They were like, because we didn't make him look like death at the age of 41, we're gonna like, he's all wrinkled and withered like he's 180. Simmer down, game. He's only sick. He's not even 60. Could be a little wrinkled, but he ain't that fucking wrinkled. Jesus Christ. Simmer down. Anyway, I reached out a wrinkled, decrepit crypt keeper hand, because I'm over the age of 40 in an Atome game, / anime logic. I mean, you know, to the cheek of my son, who is even kinder than he was a crybaby. After all, you have the divine protection of the kind watchman of death. Watchman of death? Noel didn't remember anything about Anko, but he knew that he was taken care of by the young man in the story I made up. Make sure you never forget to pass on that story of the Lycoris Noirs. At the same time, you must not let anyone know about its secrets, so hide the book of botany I translated in my grave. The only ones who have the right to touch the book is my friend and his allies. I got it, but are you sure about all this, Father? Don't you want to see your Watchman of Death friend before you leave? He had a good point. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to see him again, but our encounter will simply act as a shackle and bring about a new scar into his life, which is why it's for the best that I fall asleep with my dear memories. Stop with that look on your face, Noel. I couldn't be any happier knowing that my dear son is watching over me as I prepare to leave. Because at this point, Noel would be like 15, because he was already 2 and 12, and that's a year later after Cyan's birth, so, like, that's gotta be hard. You're leaving a teenage kid alone. Well, he's, you know, well, fair enough, midlife. He is now admitted middle age, because he's probably going to die at 30. I'd love to have stayed awake until my son stopped crying, but it was no use. My vision was blurring and going dark. Death would soon come to reap my soul. Which was why, although that doesn't also make sense if he's 59. Oh, well, that's true. He was actually like 41. He was 41 when he met Lilo. Right, see? Wait a minute. That makes the timeline even more fucked up. It was 16 years from when he got here and gave the book to Cyan's supposed grandfather. Plus that it was 5 years before she died. That's 21 years. And now Noel had already been born, okay? So, alright. But he was here for 20 fucking years. Well, okay, now the timeline of when she died might have been a little messed up or whatever. It was like a year later, but Noel was only a baby at the time. But it's been 12 years since, so it's still his age is, if he's 59, he was 45, 46. Okay, when Anko showed up. Well, no, 46 when Lilo died, so he's probably 47 when Anko showed up, because he said it was like a year later, I think. No, now the timeline makes sense, because then 12 years later. Okay, yes. So, but again, that makes no motherfucking sense, because it's been 30 some odd fucking years, and people only live 23 years. How the hell? You couldn't have given the book to Cyan's grandfather.
It had to have been his great-grandfather. But I'm pretty sure science said it was his grandfather. Well, maybe he didn't, and maybe I'm just, but like, so I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't know. I'm either misremembering or the timeline's fucked up. I'm not sure. So someone will tell me if I'm wrong and be like, no, it's science never said is like, because I swear he said grandfather, but that doesn't seem to fucking line up again unless your grandfather was 10 out there solving mysteries. Like, I mean, if you look at Dud, he was like fucking like a genius scientist at 15 and then like got a reliver body and was always in it. So fair enough. Zion's grandfather could have been like a fucking genius prodigy at 15 as well, you know. And then that kind of makes up, but it's still really tight, is all I'm saying. But anyway, which was why I couldn't stop Noel from running out of the room. Oh, you're not even there when your dad dies? Noel, you're going to regret that. I thought we were going to get the ending, and yet, well, we're Noel. I didn't care if my lungs collapsed. I ran all the way out here because I wanted to fulfill one last deed for my father. Ah! That's basically the only noise you used to make. I found myself in the center of the field of Lycorises that my father and I protected throughout our lives. If that story was real, this Watchman of Death had to be somewhere near the Lycorises. I ran through the field to look for a shadow of this so-called Watchman of Death. Come on out, Watchman of Death! You're my father's friend, aren't you? Please, please see him before he leaves. He's been worried about you all this time. I didn't see anyone. No one was there. I ran all the way out here, but how was I supposed to find this person? I didn't even remember the face of this Watchman of Death. Damn it! Damn it! I cried as I ran through the field. The day came to an end and night filled the air, but I still wouldn't give up. Watchman of Death! My father's friend! My brain was lacking oxygen and old memories slowly began to surface. That's right. I used to call this person by a certain name when we lived in that secluded place. You were too! Do we get another CG? Adolphe! I shouted the name with all my might. Smack, how fucking dare you? I've put on this goddamn affect for 12 fucking years, and you're gonna call me out? With the wrong name? Like, but that's kind of cute that he fucking remembered it. Truth be, I should have died on the raging seas. Instead, I can now die peacefully on a bed. An end that's too good for me. Now I can finally go and see Lilo. I wonder if she would recognize me through all these wrinkles. Jesus Christ! You don't get that wrinkly! I mean, some people I guess do, but like, I mean, I guess they've been tolling fields and like out in the sun, so maybe, but I'm just looking at my family, okay? I'm looking at my family and our withered, aging selves. We're not that fucking wrinkly, okay? Like, I mean, I'm not 60 yet, but like, Jesus. My mother's not that fucking wrinkly in her 70s, like, simmer down, game. They literally make the drifter sound like he's 100. I heard the door open slowly. It must be Noel returning after collecting himself. Oh no, it's gonna be Anko. Do we get another CG? They keep doing the white screen and freaking me out. Tamaki. It couldn't be. This voice. Could it really be? I want it. Oh, we do get another CG. Stop it. I thought I told you it would be best to stay away. Oh, it's always sad Adolphe. Why is it always devastated Adolphe? Oh, look, he's so sad. I know now he's sad, Anko, but you really are too kind to be the Watchman of Death, Anko. Oh. Despite the suffering Noel endured from the Lycoris toxins, he never gave up. The sound of his cries. Oh. I'm assuming we're supposed to be Adolphe now.
Or Onko, and despite the suffering Noel endured from the Lycoris toxins, he never gave up. The sound of his cries drew me out and brought me here. I have to say you look quite different than before, Tamaki. Tamaki had grown so old in just a matter of 12 years that I hardly recognized him. I could hear Noel waiting outside beyond the door. I was sure he wanted to rush inside and cling to his father until his final moment, but he told me he had said all that he needed to say to his father. You still want to be there. And so he gave me what time his father had left. Tamaki must have sensed what happened as he wasn't telling me to leave. He did his best to turn his head to look up at me, seeing me unchanged from before. Thank you for coming to see me before I left. I have nothing to regret now.
This is so bromantic and I love it so fucking hard. This is the best bromance in this game. Like, I'm sorry. I know Adolphe and Eve were like adorable and shit, and like Hugo and Eve is like, I mean, that bromance is different. That's a romance right there, okay? That's they got married, all right? When I'm not involved with Eve, that's like an absolute fucking gay romance, okay? But this is so bromantic. Like, it's adorable.
You've got to be kidding. He was a special existence in this country, a life form who could live longer than anyone else. So what? Tamaki had grown so frail over the years. It was because this country and our promise pushed him to his limit. The promise we made led you to live a life that lacked peace. If we didn't have this promise in place, you could have lived another 10 years more with Noel. I haven't changed one bit from the former me before. I keep causing misfortune to everyone close to me.
Also, another reason why Anko hates Adolphe, because he's like, Adolphe made that deal and killed my friend! Simmer down, sweetie!
Don't be stupid. Hearing my wail, Tamaki responded with scathing words. I had a loving wife and a loving son. Most of all, I had a dear friend like no other. How is that misfortune? You need to hold more confidence in yourself, in your existence. That said, I can't deny that I wish I could have lived another 10 years. If possible, even just a bit longer. I wanted to watch your journey. But that right will go to Noel and my descendants to come. I'm sure your hero will come and give you the support you need. And with that...
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot we were Anko.
With that, Tamaki drew his frail hand out from under the blanket and handed me something. This is Kisaru from before. If, in the future, you encounter unbearable solitude, use it. It won't solve your problems, but I'm sure it will help ease your soul even for just a moment.
You know, Anko never whips out a pipe or anything like that, or has, so it's like, that would have been a good thing to have in the story and then tie it back here, but they never bring it up. So it's something they added here that they didn't have originally, you know? At least I don't remember them ever doing it.
I swallowed down my cries and took the gift that was a token of our friendship. I wanted to tell him not to die. I wanted to tell him that I was sorry that I was the cause of his death. But, indeed, I'm so glad that I was able to live this long. I couldn't tell him anything as he was so satisfied with his coming end. I'm glad to have met you too. I grabbed the smoking pipe he entrusted to me and gave him my cliched response. But hearing that cliched response, Tamaki smiled happily. And then his end arrived. Farewell, my dear friend Anko. I warped this country's common sense, so I'm sure I will not go to heaven, but instead to Hades. But I won't be waiting for you. Do you know why? It's because I'm sure you'll go to heaven after you save your beloved in this country. Ever so slowly, as if gently rowing a boat. Anko, the sliver of light that changed my life of despair to one of hope. Please, I ask that you grab hold of those beloved days you wish to never let go. Safe travels, my friend. With the farewell that one would expect from a drifter, he quietly fell asleep.
He got his whole fucking life story. From the moment he left his home to like here. That's like so sad. Somebody had to die. They weren't going to give us levity.
He was quickly cremated and Noel buried him in a grave that was prepared beforehand. A few days had passed since I parted ways with Noel. I used what little strength I had left to visit my friend. I dropped a flame onto the smoking pipe and took in a bit of the aroma, but the pungent smell forced me to cough. I calmed my coughing down somehow and looked at the grave where he slept. I thought as much, but this doesn't taste good at all. My wheezing forced a single black tear from my eye. It gently fell onto a Lycoris blooming next to his grave and disappeared.
We've unlocked Onko now. So yeah, this unlocks all those side story interludes and then unlocks all the Onko stuff. So that's basically it. There's no other choices. There's no other endings. That is it. But I'm assuming, well, we have 2 CGs, so. There they are. It unlocks 2 CGs, though. The adorable little, like, this is the only one we get of the Drifter, though, which is kind of sad because he's so beautiful in this. He looks so ridiculously goofy in, but, like, look at Onko's ass. Also, why does that Lycoris petal that's in the very forefront look very phallic? What were you doing? What are you doing? Is it just, I'm sorry if that didn't pop, like, listen, I all of a sudden was like, what is that and why is it there? It needs, it's slightly deformed, but it is like, what the fuck? Seriously, game? What were you thinking? What were you doing? It was like, look, here's Onko's ass right in front of you. It's actually kind of funny. I find it hilarious, but it was a choice. It was a choice, and I question the choice. But also, the Drifter's so beautiful, and the only CG you give us of him is this one where he just, like, looks like a little doll. He doesn't even look like himself, you know what I mean? It's adorable, but it's like, it's not him. And then we get sad Onko. So, like, to be fair, neither of them are the best. Like, oh, there's beautiful stuff to them. But it's like, this one's sad, you know? And, like, yes, it's sad that the Drifter died, but, like, he grew old-ish? Air quotes around that. Okay. For the time period, I guess, and because you were living on this island busting your ass to grow the Lycorises, it sucked out some of your lifespan, so, okay, whatever. 60 isn't old, but whatever. Compared to the 23 years, he's ancient. But, like, you know, he got to live to an almost elderly state, late middle-aged. Because I guess you don't not considered an elder until you can, like, retire or, well, can you get on AARP and get senior citizen discounts at 59? I don't think you can. Don't you have to be, like, in your 60s for that? Well, anyway, so roughly around the senior citizen age, discount age, you know, somewhere in there. You're encroaching on senior citizenship. You know, so I guess, sure, but, you know, so, like, he lived a long-ish happy life. He didn't die at 23, and he had a family, and you know what I mean? So he went out on it. He was like, yeah, no, led a good life. I'm okay with this, which doesn't help. My dad was one of those people that used to say things like that. Like, I mean, we'll end on the Drifter because it's so funny. Just, oh God, was one of those people that, like, was like, I led a good life, and it's like, you could just, I don't give a crap, that doesn't mean you get to die, but, you know, but that's how you want to go when it's your time. You don't want to be like, fuck, no, I had so much left to do, and I hate, you want to be like, you know what, no. Yeah, I'd like another 10 years, but if I'm going to go out now, I'm at least happy with what I did in the time that I had. You know what I mean? That's all you want. That's all you can ask for, and that's how Tamaki went out, so good for him. You know, poor Anko, but Anko, you're going to be burying a lot of motherfuckers. You're going to watch Noel die, you know. You're going to watch Eve be born. He's going to be peeping in the windows being like, look, that's my bestie right there. He could like peep in the windows and be like, look, that's me. No, no, Adolphe, don't put that crayon in your mouth, idiot. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why he hates himself too. I don't know. He watched himself as a child and was like, idiot. You're supposed to color with the crayons, not eat them. Who knows? We don't know. But yeah, overall, the Drifter story was good and I liked it. The timeline was a little messed up and I just feel like they threw some stuff in there and I don't think they thought about it too hard, but it is what it is, whatever. But yeah, so we get to start Anko next time. So Anko, I guess, well, technically, does he have an encore ending? Because Anko's round, Anko endings in his salute ending, so that's the salvation ending. There are no choices in despair and the salvation endings. And then he has like side stories. So, okay, so he does not have an encore thing. Oh, thank God. Because the encore, well, I mean, I guess that's true because the La Salute or Les Salute or whatever it was called was a on coffee ending combo thing. And we kind of did that with Adolphe. So going through it and doing it again would have been douchey of them to be like, we'll do it again, but like slightly different. And you're like, because listen, again, you'd be playing the first game. Then you would come here and you'd be playing the same ending, but just slightly different, and then doing it a third time. That would get really fucking annoying. And again, most of them didn't bother me because, like I said, it's been so long since I played the first game, I don't fucking remember them, so it's a nice refresher. But if we just did Adolphe and then we do Anko, I'd be like, I just read all this shit a couple of days ago. Maybe a week or two ago, but I'd still be like, too much, too close. So it's a good thing they didn't do that. But anyway, we will start Anko next. And I will have to see how I'm doing with things. I don't think I have enough stuff for this week to post. We might have to go back to every other day before February, guys. I don't know. Then this might be in February then. I don't know. We'll have to see. You'll know before I do. You'll know before this post probably if that's the case. But anyway, I will see you guys next time. Remember to give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe to see more.